Morning. A very, very warm welcome, Sandhya.
Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you for the invitation and thank you all. Good evening to one and all present
Right.
here.
Yeah. So I'll just introduce Sandhya. Sandhya is a Chennai-based holistic nutritionist and a natural farmer, combining traditional Indian wisdom and modern science. She has done her master's in dietetics and food service management. Right after her graduation, she started her journey as a junior nutritionist in the wellness industry. She's exploring organic farming, sustainable living, and understanding health through lens of Indian wisdom, that is Ayurveda. She took up the initiative to start Wellness with Sandhya since 2019, where she provides intensive workshops, health talks, and diet consultants. She's a mother of two, farming and producing her own food, a freelancer consultant, and an ardent follower of yoga and Reiki. She walks the talk and shows you can be healthy with simple practice. A very, very warm welcome. So,
Thank
Sandhya,
you. Yeah.
my first question to you is tell me about your life choices. Like you come across as an urban person and then, you're a farmer. So how does it work out? We have a certain image of a farmer, right, in our head.
Yeah.
Can an urban person be a farmer really?
Definitely it is possible. I'm one such example and there are many other friends who do it these days. Uh, it started with my first pregnancy. Okay. So
Uh-huh.
I was very questioning deeper on how it is possible for my grandmother to be so healthy that she's so
Mm-hmm.
flexible even in her 80s and she can eat anything on earth and doesn't have diabetes or any kind of disorder, but all her
Right,
next generations have all the issues on earth. Her own
right.
sons and daughters are not that great with health when compared to my grandmother. So that was the question. No, that was an inspiration. And during the time, I got an opportunity to meet a farmer called Gomati Nayakam, who was 80 plus 10 years back, with all his tooth intact, perfectly white and shining, no wrinkles on face, and not even a single hair is gray. Okay, so that made me, I was awed by his presence and his energy, and he traveled from Tirunelveli to Chennai via train, just took a shower, got ready and came for a lecture.
Wow.
So that inspired me a lot, and that made me understand that there is something called organic, there is something called natural farming, and all the food that we eat is not really natural, and all the nutrition that we think it is there in food is not really there if the soil is not nourished. So that's when my journey into food in the realistic way started, by meeting this farmer. After that, in 2 3 years, my and my husband, we started exploring what is farming and how it is possible. Then he was one of the co-founder for a organization called Nallakire, which tried to produce kire, which is greens. So
Mm-hmm.
greens is something really healthy, but it's not organic. It was not organic, it was not naturally grown 10 15 years back. All that you will get is urea loaded, pesticide loaded greens, and we think it's healthy, but it has a lot of chemicals that are much more harmful than the benefits we get. So we started with growing greens initially, and so the organization is now into producing grains, and it is functioning like a cooperative these days. But that's where our journey into organic farming started.
Right. So like next question to it is, when we think of farming, first thing comes to our head is land. You need a place to kind of grow, right?
Yeah.
So how was it for you?
Yeah. So initially, this method, Nallakira is farming, it was not on our own lands. We just leased out
Mm-hmm.
lands and we started the
Mm-hmm.
process. And
Okay.
to start farming, you actually need not know anything. That's the
Okay.
best way to start. So you need not having experience on farming, because that's how we usually think. I don't have experience. What can I do? What will I do? That's the best
Right.
place to start. That will make you a great learner, where with every opportunity you will be eager enough to learn how it is happening. And the
Mm-hmm.
simplest, how we started, we didn't even know which seed was what, and
Mm-hmm.
we just sow the seeds. And even when the plant sprouted, we didn't know whether it was tomato or whether it was brinjal. Only after it started fruiting, oh, this is brinjal plant, only then we understood. That's how we started initially. So it's a best place to learn, where with experiments you can, it's a deep science where you will get involved and you can understand on your own. You need not require any book knowledge, but if you can talk with people in your locality and old people, especially who are doing farming, who will give you a lot of inputs. Despite their method of farming, which is chemical, you will still find some intelligence with them, where you can understand what is the crop that has to be sown, what's the season, and how they are calculating rains. So all this can be understood just with the local knowledge.
Right. So if I found it very interesting that it says through the lens of Indian wisdom, Ayurveda. So what is this Indic lens that you talk about?
Okay. So the main question that will arise when one has to shift from urban living to a rural living is, how do I maintain my health, or what is the scope for reaching a hospital? Because in cities, every street has one clinic or the other. So, or with a call, you can reach some medical help. But in rural areas, it's not so. You really need to know something to safeguard yourselves, like simple practices like what leaf for what. All the simple remedies should be known. So that's what we thought, and we were guided. And then that made me understand that there is something called native science, which is Ayurveda. Ayurveda is scripture based. So there is something called country medicine, where you, in Tamil, you call it Natu Vaidyam, where it's simply few leaves or few herbs that is in a garden that can cure your common ailments. Like cold can be cured. All of us know Tulsi is a great healer. Likewise, there are many other weeds which can just help you remove all the phlegm in the body within the 2 to 3 days, come to your antibiotic exposure. So the main question when one goes to from urban to rural living is, how do I keep up my health? How do I maintain health? Especially when you have young kids, you should know how to manage a scorpion bite or an ant bite. Ants are not like the one in the cities. The ants in the farm are quite different. So with every insect, you should know what is the antidote. There are few simple antidotes like chunna. Chunna is a great antidote, and beeswax is a great antidote. Likewise, you have to learn what is the country medicine that is available in your place around, say, within 1 kilometer. So to know that, you have to understand what is your dosha. Yeah. Dosha is nothing but what is Ayurveda basically. So in Ayurveda, the main principle is the elements that are present in nature, the Pancha Mahabhutas that are present in nature, is also present in every human body, and also an animal body, and also in plants. So that is the basics of Ayurveda. So knowing this basics really helped me understand the climate and climatic changes, because when you live in the city, you are born and brought up in similar kind of weather, and you're contained in a similar kind of environment almost through the season, except for places like North India, where it's extreme winter and extreme summer. In South, it's almost the same temperature. It's probably rainy or sunny. There is not much of difference, and you are largely protected. But when you enter nature and natural environment, we have to understand the change in weather and modify our diet and all the herbs and the seasonings that we use accordingly, so that we don't fall sick.
So how can you come up with a simplified like a version of it? Like, how do we understand what dosha am I, and what should I really eat while being mindful of the fact that I'm of this dosha?
Okay. So dosha is something very unique, just like a fingerprint, which is unique for every person. So the ratio of 3 doshas in each person will vary within the same person across his age. Like in infanthood, it is different. In teenage, it is different. In old age, it is different. In middle age, it is very different. But what one can, and with climate also, it keeps changing. With geographical zone also, it keeps fluctuating. So what one can understand is, if you're a person with simply with emotional things, like simply if you're a person who tends to get angry quickly, then it's a possibility that you are a pitta dominated person. Yeah. And if you're a person who can pick up anxiety and stress easily, and you're a palpitating type of a person, then probably vata is high. Vata is the dominating dosha then. And if it's a person who takes his own time in doing things, not necessarily lazy. Although it can slip to lazy, but if it is a person who takes his or her own time in doing certain things in a certain way, and they are very specific, then it's kapha dosha, basically sticky sense. In whatever they do it only in certain way and certain time.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is kapha dosha. So these are simple ways to understand. To get it in detail, it requires a huge
Of course.
lecture. Yeah.
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess this is a very specific to Indian philosophical point of view where you present, because we don't get this kind of an understanding of either herbs or medicine from anywhere else. So this is not really a Western point of view. This is very specific, right?
Yeah, it's very specific.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So how does one understand? Yeah, you already talked about dosha. You talked about dosha of the person, but do we have any kind of a dosha of the food that we eat?
Yeah. So in food in general, if I have to say, I can say about vegetables, where vegetables are mostly vata triggering.
Okay.
That is why in Ayurvedic tradition, raw vegetables are not prescribed at all. No salads, no raitas.
Oh,
So
wow.
vegetables should always be taken in a cooked form, especially if you're a person who tends to have a lot of gastritis or acidity, or even in general. If you ask me, I wouldn't suggest a diet which will have raw salads.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because in our head it's like salad is a great thing to eat and all.
That's totally Western and Western philosophy.
Yes.
But even in Western medicine, there is a separate branch of science called FODMAP diet, where they remove all the gassy items that comes under Vata list with a fancy name called FODMAP. Okay, it's an abbreviation. So anything which will ferment in the gut, it's fermentable, oligosaccharide, disaccharide, monosaccharide, and polyol, which is basically a Vata triggering food. What all triggers Vata? An Indian will definitely know chana dal, rajma, and your whole urad, and your potatoes, your raw banana. So these things, at least I can say a person, anybody who's above 50 years in the current era will know that these are Vata triggering items.
Yeah. So all kind of pulses are kind of and Vata triggering and should not be.
Not should not be, should be used, but with certain knowledge. Like pulses are always soaked and cooked and eaten. It's never eaten raw. And anyone who tends to have more gas prone, more Vata aggravation prone, should avoid chana dal, chickpea, and rajma, and should avoid salads, which is again gas producing. Traditionally, if you have noticed in Ayurvedic preparation or even in traditional Indian preparation, vegetables like raw banana and cluster beans, which are highly gassy, will always be cooked and the water will be drained. That is basically to remove and reduce the Vata property.
Right. So there is a lot of wisdom and value in how we have been taught to use things also.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
and another example is rotis, chapatis. In North, at least in certain families, even today, they don't prepare it throughout the year. Be it millet rotis or be it wheat rotis, they prepare it only during winter because it triggers a lot of heat, pitta, which is required during winter. And in summer, it is always pacifying food like dal khichdi or some pulav or some curd rice type of items. So these are the items that will be prepared during summer, even in North. But now we have been made to believe that wheat is the superfood and wheat roti has to be taken on a daily basis, that we forgot on how we ate it and we eat it left, right, and center.
Right. We eat whatever we feel like. So it's almost like that. We have forgotten that, gajar ka halwa should only be made during winters and not throughout the year. And we used to get also vegetables, certain vegetables will not get throughout the year. We'll get it only seasonal. Like corn will be during rainy season. It was like that, I remember.
Yeah.
But today is like breakfast is we are having corn.
And the specific type of greens like moringa has become too famous these days. But moringa is something that should not be used on a daily basis. It can be used once in a week if your gut is really strong, or once in a fortnight only. And there are specific types of greens that is taken during Ekadashi, which
Mm-hmm.
is basically a cleanser and also a highly potent variety of green, because moringa or agati, these greens are loaded with beta carotene that the amount you receive in one day will take care of your 10 days needs.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, Basil, please mute yourself, please. Otherwise, I'll have to remove you. So, Sandhya, you mentioned about Ekadashi, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
why do you mention? Why did you mention? Why did the mention come here?
See,
Like,
I
I
started
really
seeing
want to
all
connect it.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
started seeing all this because nowadays we talk about intermittent fasting. We talk about fasting once in a fortnight or once a week. But all this has
Right.
been there in our tradition in a systematic way, where every Ekadashi there is a
Mm-hmm.
proper fasting, and there is a proper way to finish fasting, and there is a
Mm-hmm.
proper way to replenish your beta carotene, which is something that you need for 10 to 15 days. So there is a proper cycle in giving that nutrient to the body, and your gut is healing. You are detoxifying your body with fasting and by taking these greens.
Right.
So all this was there in tradition, but the science was not told. But now it comes back to us saying intermittent fasting is good, where traditionally we have been eating a brunch which is 10ish, 11ish, and a dinner by 6:37. This is how people
Yeah.
in India have generally eaten before.
Right.
But
Yes.
because of breakfast is tiffin, or breakfast is Kellogg's, and breakfast is important, all this
Yeah.
has Western fad has come into our system. So now it's too confusing for people. It's here, whether it is breakfast, lunch and dinner, or whether should I take intermittent fasting. What I would say is just look back what people ate 20-25 years back in your own family and choose that,
Mm-hmm.
because that is what will keep us closer to health.
Right. Yeah, true. I mean, there was a certain value in, starting, doing the Ekadashi and then early morning make a chana ka sabji or something like that. So it was, yeah, that's very true. It was like that. So, this is like very interesting to understand that, uh, you are a urban farmer, but how do we urban people kind of, be a farmer? What would you suggest?
Be a farmer, you just have to get it started. So one thing that one should not expect is, will I get my returns on investment? We should not consider it like putting a fixed deposit, or a mutual fund where you get the benefits in a certain fixed way. We will get
Right.
benefits at a much more different level and at a larger level, where
Right.
currently the whole world is going behind immunity, and we're all feeling claustrophobic inside the same
Mhm.
house, living inside the same house. But
Yes.
imagine if you are just living inside 1 acre or 3 acre or 10 acre, where there is a house, and whatever happens in the world, you have your own food and you have your own fresh air. Don't you think
Right.
life will be much better
Yeah.
and much
It's
peaceful?
absolutely, yeah. It's absolutely better, and I guess a lot of people are, going back to, their native places and places they used to live in with a, smaller place. So, do you think we people who are, into, what do I say, living in flats,
Hmm.
can do anything about it? Like,
Yeah, there are a
start a
lot
bit
of
of a,
startups these days where somebody takes care of our farm and farming. So we just have to pay for half a cent or 2 cents or 5 cents, and we can go and visit that place on a weekly basis and do some farming. And the rest of the days, somebody else will take care of your farm. So there are various models available these days. One thing
hmm,
is you can start with terrace gardening or just 4 or 5 pots in your balcony. That's one way to start getting connected. The next level is you can lease, or go with somebody who's leasing a land and who will take care. It's like a subscription. So that's happening somewhere in Chennai. There is a person who does it, and she also delivers vegetables. So that
right.
model is available. The next level is for you to move and create your own space. And so there are people who just save money for a while and then go buy a piece of land and settle there. This is one way. The other way is people who continue to do the work they are doing online and then
Right.
create their own farm and start living remote and work from there. So my journey, we uprooted ourselves from Chennai. We thought of
Okay.
uprooting, and then we lived in the farm, established everything. And then we figured out that we have to have a mix of both worlds where I can continue to do the work that I like to do, plus also
Right.
make farming my way of living.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because to scale up farming for monetary benefits is next level, and that requires
Right.
a different kind of compromise and focus, and that
Right.
really depends on the place where we live and the kind of water and the weather. So if we
Right.
are choosing a place which is bit hot and dry, but
Right.
is enough to give your needs for the home, then it's always
Mm-hmm.
better to have alternate source or main source of income is something different, but farming is a way of living. So that is our my model or our model. It evolves. So, and there are many other friends who does this, where they work in IT, and
Mm-hmm.
then they scale down from where their position to a certain level that will allow them to work from home. Then they move to a farmland and they establish the internet connection there, and they continue to farm and work from home. So this is
Right.
happening, and this has been happening for quite some time.
Right. So, I would really want to understand from you, since you uprooted yourself and went for, a place where you could do farming as well. How was the whole, I mean, you already talked a bit about it, but also understand on a psychological level, how was it for you, your children? Because uprooting from a urban space, from a flat to, it's a bit, it's a bit radical, at least, I think for myself, then it's a little difficult to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, we were too excited that nothing was
Okay.
stopping us. And we were happy
Super.
about the open space and vast space and the scope for green.
Yeah. Okay.
And the children, I had only my elder child then, and she was even more happy because all that an infant or a toddler or anybody between 3 and 6
Mm.
requires is few sticks and
Wanted.
some clay. That is all they
Yeah.
need, and she was thoroughly happy and learning there. So that was not at all
Super.
a problem.
Right. Super. I understand. Right. It should be. But what were your, parents, family? Because there are a lot of pressure, from the families as well. As in,
Yeah,
So
they were
what was the
really
reaction?
shocked. They were really shocked.
Right.
Initially, they were wondering, what's all this? Why are you doing this? And all
Yes.
that. But after a while, they began to understand that they are, they understood that we are seeing something else compared to what others are seeing. So
Hmm.
we were not
Hmm.
inclined to buy a flat or pay EMI, not
Right.
that kind of life. We are choosing a different kind of life. So it was
Right.
not really a pressure. Initially, there was some puzzle kind of reaction, but then I think they understood.
Right. That's awesome that you got a lot of support. I have a question
Yeah.
here from Ankit. He says raw greens are good. He's sharing that he's on raw diet for last 4 months.
Uh,
So if they are not prescribed in Ayurveda, what's the best diet to detox fasting?
okay. See, detox is not something that is it's not a separate part of life. Detox is something that will happen naturally every night if you sleep on time and eat on time. Okay. So detox as a separate process is again a Western philosophy. And raw vegan, excuse me.
No problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So raw vegan, I have tried experimented vegan diet, raw diet, no onion garlic diet, and
Right.
after figuring out and even vegetarian keto diet, so explored all
Right.
this on myself and then screwed up my doshas, and I'm where I am now today is because of all this experience along with some knowledge from texts. Okay, so what will happen with a raw vegan diet is you will feel absolutely fine, you will feel light, all that will happen, but after a point your vata will go for a toss, and if you're not
Mm-hmm.
taking sufficient amount of fats and oils in your diet, then your skin will get dry, your hair will get brittle, and no you will be in a position where you will not understand that I have done so much compromise in eating everything perfect, but why is that my system is not giving me energy? Why am I feeling dull? This is the usual reaction. And what is the best replacement? Just eat cooked greens thrice a week. Try to have a lot of variety of vegetables, and best is to have half kg of vegetable in a day, which means right from morning to night. With breakfast, you should have a cup of vegetable. With lunch, 2 cups of vegetables, and with dinner, 2 cups of vegetables. How is this possible? Simply your curries is easily going to be a cup of vegetable, And you can make your chutneys with vegetable instead of plain coconut. If you're adding some greens to it, then that's a wonderful choice. Otherwise, make a chutney which is completely vegetable based. So you just have to split the vegetable intake and the dal intake throughout the day instead of eating one thing for a meal.
Right. So you mentioned chutneys. So chutneys and different kinds of chutneys was a very important part of our ingredient, like part of our meal. So what do you think of that? Like and it's gone for a toss. Now we have dips, mayo dips and all different kinds of dips. What do you think of all that?
So if you look keener into the label, you will understand what goes into it. Mayo is something, if it is homemade with lots of eggs, and the combination is it's egg yolk, 6 egg yolks, 1 full egg, and 1 cup of oil and a cup of vinegar. Okay.
Yeah.
All this in general, you will not combine all these ingredients. Will we ever combine 1 cup of oil with 1 cup of egg? No. We'll never do that. So what you eat in the form of mayonnaise is something, this is the original combination of mayonnaise with little mustard powder. All this is emulsified. If you're going for a vegetarian mayonnaise, then it's even more harmful because there is no eggs. It is just oil which is emulsified with lots of chemicals. So what tastes nice on your tongue is not actually good beyond the 3-4 inches. It will trigger a lot of acidity, and it's high calorie with poor nutrients. So even if a person is not following Ayurveda or Indian philosophy like me, will still not prescribe mayonnaise or any of these fatty dips. What are the dips that are good from the Western perspective? Guacamole is good, where it is made with avocado and coriander. So that is a good dip. Otherwise, tahini is a good dip. Pesto is a good dip. So it's chutney in some other form. So, but the combination is appropriate there.
Yeah. So you have any good words for the chutneys that we have, like different kinds of chutneys, like pudina, dhania, tomato, and other different kinds of sesame?
Yeah, we also make it with ridge gourd and with the pulp of the pumpkin. So when you buy a whole yellow pumpkin, there is a lot of pulp inside with seeds. So you can remove the seeds, and just the pulp is a wonderful, it's very rich in nutrients, and that can be made into a chutney where it's a library. So if you want, I can share the recipe. So in South India, they call it togayal. So we make it with pumpkin's core, and we make it with zucchini. You can make with ridge gourd, peel of ridge gourd, and you can also make a chutney with chow chow, nukhol, and brinjal. All this tossed up together in one chutney, in a regular onion tomato chutney. There are various versions of chutney. If you just decide to make things healthy and add more vegetables, the n number of combinations are available.
Right. Yeah. I think Radhakrishnan has a question. He's asking, would you be able to suggest some places where we can do remote farming by taking up a piece of land? So he's asking for a suggestion for land and get supplies.
Okay, suggestion for land. Maybe I can connect you to my friend who has an organization called My Harvest Farm, where she does this. She's the one who runs the farm, and you can lease a part of the land. So she will run the farm for you. So that is one possibility. The other thing is maybe if you can buy the farmland closer to the place where you live, so that it's easy for you to visit on a weekly basis. As you visit, you will get ideas, and we do workshops on farming also for people who want to start farming. There is a program called Moving into the Farm. So once in a while we do this program. So just visit the website. Yeah, Moving into a Farm. So you can visit the website, and you can also write to me. We will get in touch and talk and see what is possible in future.
There's a question from Facebook. Rupa is asking, can we take mattha from fresh curd before sunset? So this is a very specific question that has come for you.
What is mattha?
Mattha is like it's a sour curd that you make with some salt and jeera.
Okay, it's a buttermilk with jeera powder.
Yeah, you can see that.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, you can take it during summer if you're not a kapha oriented person. So if you're a vata or a pitta, like if you're a person who has tendency for ulcer or who has tendency for burning and gastritis, then definitely you can take it. If you're a person who's more prone to cold and flu and a tendency to form too much of phlegm or sinusitis, then it's best to keep a low profile on milk and milk products. Otherwise, you can take it, but preferably take it during the day and not after sunset.
Okay.
Milk can be taken after sunset, but curd and buttermilk has to be taken during the day.
Right. So now that we're talking about milk, there's a fad these days, to go vegan. What do you think of that? To just completely remove dairy out of our system.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
Yeah. So milk is definitely a problem if you don't get a good quality of milk. What is a good quality milk? Anything that is not processed and pasteurized or homogenized. Okay, let's not get into whether it is A2 or whether it is from a hybrid breed or a country breed. That is a separate study. But at least the milk should not be processed. So if you can, if you rely on your milk source from a natural source, then that milk is good for you. The second point that we have to look is we have to understand that not everybody requires milk. Especially if you're a person who's more prone to phlegm formation, which is kapha aggravation, then milk is not for you. Ayurveda doesn't prescribe milk for all. If there is kapha aggravation or if there is tendency for diabetes or obesity, then definitely milk is not given. Milk is given for somebody who's weak, thin, who's for an infant, for children who are growing, for pregnant and lactating women, and people who have more of vata or pitta oriented diseases or slight aggravation of vata and pitta, they can have milk. If it's a kapha aggravation, then definitely milk is not given from Ayurvedic wisdom. From Western wisdom, it's the lactose which goes for a toss. So we don't have the right kind of enzyme in our gut, then we cannot tolerate the lactose. So that creates a lot of issues like lactose intolerance, or even with lactose intolerance, either it could affect your breathing, or it could affect the skin quality, or it can affect the quality of digestion. So the person might not be able to find the reason, or not even a single medicine on earth can be helpful for this person to heal his gut issues. But just weaning him, stopping milk can heal him completely.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Wow. So actually emphasizing again on the importance of doshas of the person and of the product. So that is eventually it's not about vegan and all that.
Yes.
It's actually about matching the person and with the dosha.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Good to hear that. So again, I'm a non-vegetarian person. So what is your take on the whole non-vegetarian part?
Yeah. So definitely, I wouldn't say no or stop non-veg, it's bad. Nothing like that. Again, you have to look into the source of your non-veg. It should not be processed or canned. It should be from a source like just from your village, and the animal grows in a natural form, or as much as possible closer to natural form, and you just buy it, you clean it, and then you prepare it, then that's the best for you. And you should also understand which season what to take.
Okay.
In summer, chicken is not advised too much. It's heating. And bone marrow soups like mutton soups are taken on a regular basis if you are a person who's anemic or weak. So you should know when to use what type of non-veg and what kind of preparation, and vary it according to seasons. If not, simply at least avoid anything that is processed, like your non-veg patties or your ham burgers. These sausages, these are things that should be completely avoided.
So basically, you are saying all those food products that we see, all those packaged non-vegetarian stuff, that should be completely avoided.
Yes. Highly toxic.
Okay. So
it's toxic.
Highly toxic. Okay.
Yes,
it's toxic.
It is. There are a lot of studies to prove that these days. Even in the West, they don't recommend all this. Especially fishes, salmons from Japan is something that we are saying no. And even in US, people are becoming aware because it has a lot of mercury poisoning. So you end up with all kind of metabolic disorders just by eating salmon on a daily basis, thinking that salmon and tuna is very healthy, but it comes with mercury poisoning.
So just a personal experience that I had while having sushi, I felt I really didn't like it. I didn't get it. So what do you think? I mean, it is termed as a very healthy food and all that.
Classic dish. Unfortunately, raw and cooked food should never be combined.
Okay.
Yeah. In Ayurveda, that's the basic philosophy. So even with salads, if you're eating a salad, eat a salad separately and never combine it with any cooked food. Fruit should never be combined with milk. Likewise, any non-veg should not be combined with any uncooked non-veg should never be combined with cooked food. Sushi is a mix of all this.
Right.
So and Indian gut is not so used to raw non-veg like the Western or the Japanese gut. We have a different kind of flora. So it's definitely not a good thing to even try.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Wow, wonderful. Neha has a question here. Do you know any such people in Maharashtra who can help? Okay. So I guess Sandhya would not know. There's a question from Radhakrishnan is our staple food for ages in my family is rice at night. My grandparents uh, and parents and my age group have curd rice at every night. So yeah, so he's basically saying rice every night. So what do you think of that?
Yes, that's something that I recommend to people. See, you are eating rice in different forms. Either whether you have it as tiffin or rice as rice, it's the same. The nutrition that you're getting is same. So whether we make idli or dosa because of the availability of grinder or the availability of batter has increased these days, it doesn't mean that that is healthy, or it doesn't mean that eating rice with rasam and two vegetables is unhealthy. Definitely, one can eat rice and vegetables as we eat for lunch, for dinner also, but you just have to control the portion size. So you cannot eat the same amount of rice that you eat for lunch. You have to reduce the portion size for dinner. And the quality of rice is something that we have to see in detail when we choose rice. So preferably choose varieties that are unpolished than polished.
Right.
Hand pounded rice varieties. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So he's saying he has this thing that is it true? Is it not true that vegetarian food is healthy enough for sustainable living, and non-vegetarian food is toxic and gives a lot of stress to the digestive system?
That's not completely true. It really depends on each one's culture and tradition. In general, there are many studies which says there are pros and cons in both studies, where one says the potency of the person to deliver strength and agility is high when they eat non-veg. But there are also studies which says for cardiovascular health and to prevent lifestyle related disorders, a vegetarian, or even to prevent cancer, a vegetarian diet is the best. So this is always there. Instead of debating on whether it is vegetarian or non-vegetarian, it's better to create your own template and follow your own culture and tradition and choose a lot of variety even if you're a vegetarian.
Yeah. Right. Right. So it said that vitamin B12 is not found in vegetarian food, right?
That's not true.
Okay.
B12 is definitely present in milk, especially in buttermilk is present in abundance. And our traditional recipe of old rice, rice which is cooked and left overnight with water, and next day morning we have a traditional habit of taking that water. So that water is loaded with B12, and even sattu's porridge which is made overnight and then fermented, that has lot of B12. So B12 is available in different ways. You just have to choose a lot of variety in eating, so you end up getting nourishment from all the food groups instead of sticking to one type of food group.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's a question on Facebook. Usha is asking, do you have anything to say for the diabetes?
Diabetes.
Yeah.
Okay. See, diabetes is something that is vast, but what I can say is chew your food really well, choose whole grains, chuck all the polished grains, polished rice, especially rice has become poison only because it is a polished version these days. So choose rice that is unpolished and chew your food really well. Maximize your vegetables. Like half kg of vegetables split across the day, and have a portion of dal or paneer or tofu or anything which has protein. If you're a vegetarian, all the options that I said. If you're a non-vegetarian, egg or chicken or any other non-veg part in small portion with every meal. So for example, if your breakfast, if you can make your breakfast rice free, instead have something like a pesaretto or a chilla, and have it with lot of vegetable chutney. And for mid morning, have a glass of buttermilk with methi powder or flaxseed powder, which will take care of the hunger, at the same time bring down the sugar levels. And lunch, have at least 2 to 3 cups of vegetables, and half to 1 cup of dal, and half to 1 cup of rice. So your major filler will be the vegetables, and you will have a minimum portion of carbohydrate and protein. Likewise for dinner and evening, just have a cup of tea, and chuck all the processed food, chuck all the junk snacks, and eat something that is holistic and nourishing. Then there are people who have reversed diabetes with just diet.
Right. Yeah.
So this
yeah,
is
that's
the basics.
Yeah. I think that's the endeavor. There's a question in here. Neha is asking, why is raw food not recommended in Ayurveda? I guess she already answered that question. Hannah. Yeah. Yeah. So
You want me to
Momita
answer again?
Maybe you can, in a line or two.
Yeah. So basically, vegetables are high in highly gas producing, and if you're going to eat them raw, it's even more the tendency to increase the vata or air constituent in your body is very high, that you will end up losing a lot of hair. There will be a lot of dryness in the body, so vata will get aggravated. That is why in Ayurveda, raw food is not recommended, especially raw vegetables is not recommended. So in what form you can take raw food? You can include nuts, seeds, and 2 or 3 fruits in a day. So these are things that you can definitely go for raw, but with vegetables, it's best you avoid. Instead, if you want to maximize nutrition, have half kg vegetable, cooked vegetable, split across the day.
Right. This is another question from Momita. She's asking, okay, there's a very specific question. Which fruit or vegetable is affected for thyroid? So would you like to take that? That's very specific.
Right. Yeah. In general, it's better to keep a low profile on millets and cauliflower, broccoli, and all these cabbage. So these are things that will have something called goitrogens, but it's in a minimal quantity. So it's not actually the vegetable that you have to be cautious about, but it's about the sleep, your stress, the way you manage your stress, the way you maintain your sleep and your lifestyle, and what type of food you eat across the day. So this is what will help you heal from thyroid, rather than just looking for one thing that will cause the problem or one thing that will help in removing the problem.
Right. I hope that helps, Momita. There's another question from Ankit. He's asking, animals, okay, I don't know if it's a question at all, but still, animals don't eat cooked food. Why should we cook? So we should just...
We are human beings, and we have lived on earth for several generations. We have evolved, and we have sixth sense and beyond. And we have our gut is in a different form and shape, which requires certain kind of food in a certain way, because we have used it for a lot over a period. And why animals are not infected with all the virus and all the bacteria. It is humans, and we don't have the same kind of flora that the animals have.
I hope that helps.
And we don't, and we don't live the life that animals are living. We are not that closer to nature as animals are. So if you are living in a forest and you're just you don't know anything called stress, you don't know anything called late night sleeping, or if you don't know anything called gadgets, then you can definitely go for a raw diet, but you have to get connected to the nature.
Right. I hope that helps. I'll just take this opportunity, since you are here, to ask what there are a lot of questions on. This is a very popular question, which is how do I lose weight? What will you suggest for that?
Okay. So the first thing that you have to analyze is, what is it that made you gain weight? So for one can easily say, I was all right until marriage. Once I got pregnant, I gained weight. It's a natural cycle where during pregnancy you will gain weight. But what did you do to lose that weight after pregnancy? Yeah.
Okay.
Did you come back to the same kind of lifestyle that you had before your pregnancy? This is one simple example. So see what has changed in your lifestyle, and compare yourself to your most healthy phase in life and see what is happening these days, and correct your sleep, have a proper sleep routine, which is alignment of sleep to your circadian rhythm. Basically,
Right.
sleeping by 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. and waking up as the sun rises. That's one thing we all have to do for the body to lose that excess fat naturally. Yeah. And sleep is something that will keep the hunger hormones in control. The hunger hormones are nothing but your insulin, ghrelin, and leptin. So insulin, all of us are quite familiar with it. So insulin is what is called as growth hormone. So if it's upset, then your growth is affected, which means you either puff up or you really go down. So most of us end up gaining more weight when insulin undergoes for an imbalance. Ghrelin and leptin, these are the hormones which controls hunger. So one hormone will say how much to eat, and how much ever you eat when you don't sleep. So you might have seen this. If you have not slept well in the past night, then next day you will tend to eat more. You will not feel satisfied with whatever quantity of food you usually feel satisfied with. And a person who generally doesn't go for snacking goes for snacking when the sleep is gone for a toss. So these are things which are mild interconnections, which happens when your sleep is disturbed, and that affects your hormones. So the first thing one has to do to lose weight is to correct one's sleeping, and then move on to eating and eating patterns. See how much you're eating, drink enough water through the day.
Yeah.
Then the third thing, tertiary thing, is activity, because what happens these days is people go for activity for 1 hour or 2 hour of gymming or extreme marathon running or extreme cycling, instead of correcting the basic things like sleep and rest and proper eating. Yeah. So that's why I'm insisting that the first thing that one has to do is give good sleep and rest to the body, eat the right foods at right time and right intervals, then do some exercise, exclusive exercise. Apart from that, just be like ant and not like a couch potato. Just be active like an ant, where you work through the day with some minor movements in the body. What happens is usually people go for a exercise and they just go to their office and sit in that chair for continuously for 8 hours in front of the computer or in front of the TV or in front of the couch. So that is what usually happens. We think that we have done enough for the day by doing that exercise. Unfortunately, with exercise we burn only 300 to 400 calories. Yeah. But it is with holding some clothes, doing the household activities, basic things. These are the things that will actually burn the rest 1200 to 1500 calories. So allow your body to work through the day in normal pace with normal walking and normal movements. Naturally, you will lose weight 2 to 5 kgs every month until you reach your ideal weight.
So there you go, all the people who are watching on Facebook and people over here. Be an ant, keep yourself active, sleep well, eat in small portions, and there you go, lose weight. So Sandhya, a lot of people are asking for your email ID. I think if you could just put it out here on the chat box, so it will help. And I'll also put it on the And a lot of people have asked questions, but they're very specific. I don't know if you would like to take them, but I will just, somebody is asking how to gain weight. So, and somebody, I'll just, pick up a couple of questions together and then you can respond to them. What foods do you recommend for a person above 60 years who experiences weakness?
So these are all very specific. I have to see things in detail and get the history and then work on it.
Yeah, of course. So so let's come back to farming again, since it's all about farming. And what is your specific take on pesticide and insecticides and all of that. Like, what do you even think of that? I know you are into organic farming and you guys are not using it at all. But how does it help? And do you guys think that you guys are doing enough and better than all those people who are using pesticides and all?
Definitely, definitely. We did a small research
Okay.
where we sowed 2 years back when we did paddy. So we used the
Mm-hmm.
method called roller drum, where the seeds are sown as it is using a drum, and it just required 2 people as labor and the seed cost, and some amount of Panchagavya and Jivamrita for the 4 months in a phased out manner, and the expense was around 12,000. And my neighbor did the same same amount of land next to me, and he did all the chemical farming.
Mm-hmm.
He earned about 38,000, but his expense was 30,000. So do you see 1,000?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I spent 10 to 12,000 and I gained 20 to 25K. Although my yield
Okay.
was less, my chemical farming. This is why our farmers are getting into debt. They see the quantity of output from the farming, but they forget about the input cost. Yeah.
Right.
But if you give up on all those chemicals and then come back to the native way of doing the farming, your input cost is very low. So even if you get only 4 bags of paddy, still it is a profit, and it's a better
Right.
profit compared to your chemical farming. And
Correct.
I know many farmers, all those youngsters, they lose their vision, they lose their skin health, they lose their hair, and they look so old and weak, and they have lost their virility because of chemical farming and spraying. Especially all those guys who come and sprays for every farm on a call
Mm-hmm.
basis, they just lose
Right.
their health. And anyone who does broad beans, broad beans, avaraka, the broad bean, it
Right.
requires a lot of pesticides that the guy who sprays cannot open his eyes for the next 1 week. That is the level of
Okay.
toxicity these guys are undergoing when they do the chemical farming.
My God. It sounds really scary. So, I was just going through, a bit of a farmer's status, how they're doing, and all of us know that, there's a lot of suicides that's happening all across the country. Now that you're a farmer yourself, what do you think, and what is your take on the whole MSP thing? That they don't even get that pricing and all of that. Those who have been traditional farmers over the period of years, over centuries and generation, and because of them, we are really getting food on the table. So last week we had Ramo sir, and we said, okay, maybe
Yeah.
uh, organic farming is expensive, organic food is expensive, and all of that. And he was like, no, organic food is not expensive. It's actually subsidized food that you're getting. And farmers who are subsidizing your food, and you're really getting it a very much lower price than what it should be. What is your take on the whole thing? We don't urban
Yeah.
people really don't get it, and we
Well
really buy
explained.
very expensive clothes and furniture and everything, but
Mm.
we really don't
Mm.
want to spend on the food.
Yeah. I feel it's a huge injustice that we do to ourselves and to our community when we buy something which should be bought at 50 rupees or 100 rupees, and when we buy it at 1 rupee or 5 rupees. Yeah.
Right.
It doesn't sit well with me, or I can't even digest a food because it comes by beating somebody else's platter.
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so whose loss it is? It is the farmer's loss. So if we are buying something at 5 rupees or 1 rupee, if its original price is 50, then we definitely know that we have eaten or stolen somebody's 45 rupees, and
That's
that
the
is the
word.
cost for
True.
death. That is the
Yeah.
cost for farmer's death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess,
So
yeah.
one possible thing is the farmer has to get equipped and create a community and sell his produce directly instead of going with a mediator, because it's a mediator who decides the price and who raises the
Mm-hmm.
price, or who keeps the stock and creates demand and then increases the price, or he's the one who makes the farmer throw the produce on the road.
Correct.
So if the farmers, it is happening, there is cooperative that's getting constructed with people like Ramanjaneyulu and Anantha Senan.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people who are working on this and trying to create a movement where the farmers are able to decide their prices, but it is going to take a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
People need a shift in their mindset when they buy food, when they buy raw material, raw food. And when you buy, when you eat in a restaurant, you never raise a question on what price it is. But we all tend to raise our voices high when we buy 1 kg of vegetable.
Correct.
So we have to have create that shift in our mindset and not argue with the greens vendor or a vegetable vendor. Instead, argue with higher places where we have to actually raise our voices.
Right. Absolutely. So do you think that, buying directly from the farmer's market is a solution for urban people like us? Make an effort. It won't be easy.
Definitely it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
It won't be easy. It won't be convenient. It won't be a glossy vegetable like how you get in the supermarkets.
Correct.
But it's still worth because it has more nutrients.
Yes.
And it comes from a piece of mind, and you're doing a fair trade when you buy from such sources.
Right. Right. Okay. That's wonderful. I think that kind of solved a lot of queries that I had for you. And I think I have shared your email ID. I hope everybody has got. Is there any other question that's left to be asked? Everybody is feeling complete for the session? Sandhya, I would like to know some, if is there anything you would like to share as a parting word, as a last word?
Yeah, I'm glad that there are so many people who has questions about Ayurveda and about understanding farming. And I think this is the first way to start, because this is how it started for us 10, 15 years back into this journey. So I welcome you all into this journey. And if you have any questions regarding how to even start with farming or where to start, even if you need not even become a farmer, but if you can have your eyes on all this and look for sustainability in life, then please throw your questions. I'm happy to answer and happy to guide with whatever I have accumulated in the past few years. And I thank you for this opportunity. And the questions were really wonderful and interesting. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Radhakrishnan, you can email to her and then she can respond. He's asking, do you train farming? Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sandhya. And
thank you, RK and Rashmi. So I don't train because training is not something that is required. I can just guide, and we have workshop model for if you are planning to move into a farm.
Right.
Yeah.
And please email. I cannot share the number here, but you please email to her and she will respond. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. And